So, Kyle, I want to pick your brain a little bit. I want to put the shoe on the other foot and just ask you, as a brand partnership professional, have there been any partnerships that you haven't been involved in? Maybe you've seen another brand or another company, or perhaps just your professional peers that they've been involved in, or one that you've seen from afar that you really love or that you admire, you think it was particularly well done, etcetera. Does anything come to the top of your mind when you think about that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say that there's actually 2 that come to mind for me. One of them is in the sports world, and one of them's not. And I'll talk about the one that's not first. I think Fortnite has actually done a really fantastic job of leveraging brand partnerships. And you can see if you're a gamer or not a gamer, they tap into relevancy on a level that I haven't really seen across
Mhm.
partnerships. And I think one of the most interesting parts of what they do, especially with being as big as they are, Epic Games, massive company, obviously Fortnite in its relevancy and the amount of just like daily streamers and game players on the platform is pretty massive. So when you think about that, the massive nature of a big company, and I deal with this a lot, and so I admire it, there's a ton of red tape
Yeah.
that you have to go through and a lot of just hoops to jump through to even get a partnership done sometimes because there's a lot of risk. There's legal vetting, there's PR vetting. You've got to figure out the cross the T's and dot the I's on all the legal structure of who's getting what within the assets of those companies. And I think that Fortnite has been able to so gracefully move through, and I don't know what the back end looked like. Maybe it's
Yeah.
extremely complicated, but they're relevant whenever they do a partnership, when they do a new season of Fortnite or when they're coming out with a new platform within their gaming ecosystem. It's relevant, like it's not outdated. It's something that's either in culture currently. It could be like a movie premiere that's coming out. They've done a lot of stuff with Disney and Star Wars and led with some of the characters that are now in some of those TV shows. So the relevancy is super high. And then they're willing to move on when they need to, when it's not relevant anymore, and they go to a new brand partnership. So
Yeah.
I think I view them as one of the best. And obviously, when you think back into like OG streaming partnerships, they have one of the best ever, or one of the most epic, and no pun intended,
Yeah.
with some of their concerts they've done, Fortnite itself. Like that blew up the gaming world when they did it. So that was the onset. They had been doing it previous to that, but they really were the leaders coming out and doing these brand partnerships. So that's one. The other one in the sporting world that I think is really great is Chick-fil-A. And Chick-fil-A does a promotion. This is specifically with the NBA, but they do it across different NBA teams. And it's called, there's a couple different names, but Chick-fil-A Foul Shot or Brickin' for Chicken. And
Mhm.
essentially what it is in the fourth quarter, do you know about this? Have you seen this before?
I haven't seen this before, but I'm very
Okay.
curious to it. Please
It's
go on.
yeah. So essentially, in the fourth quarter of games, they've partnered with all of these different teams. But in the fourth quarter of games, if the opposing team is shooting 2 consecutive field goals and they miss those 2 consecutive field goals, or I'm sorry, field goals, free throws.
Yeah.
My apologies. 2 consecutive free throws. If they miss consecutive free throws, then everyone in the stadium or the arena gets a free Chick-fil-A sandwich.
Right on.
So it's pretty enticing for everyone that's in the arena. What happens is people start cheering because they've got the LEDs going. They get a free Chick-fil-A sandwich. So fans start to get rowdy on the first free throw. After the first free throw is missed, the arena goes wild because
Yep.
then it's
Ah,
everyone has an opportunity, and
yep.
it's everybody wins something, right?
Yeah.
And that's pretty fantastic when you can get to that because a lot of the promotions within an arena, can you get to that level where like everyone is winning something? Maybe,
Yep.
but it's like a little bit harder to do when you're talking about like an insurance company or like a credit card that you're trying to promote within it. So they did this study. This has been done for years now across different arenas, but they did this study after the first year. There was only a few different arenas that were doing it. And when they returned the study, they found that in the stadiums where the Chick-fil-A promotion was run, the free throw percentage of the opposing team in the fourth quarter decreased by 3 or 4%.
Now, is that just because the crowd's getting all rowdy and
Because the
involved? Yeah.
crowd was so loud, it was
Yeah.
so disruptive.
Yeah.
So when you think about a brand partnership and really impactful branding within a partnership, Chick-fil-A is literally affecting the game of basketball,
Yeah. Yeah.
with their promotion, which it's like, you talk about 12th man in football with the Seahawks
Yeah.
stadium and how rowdy they get and, like, how opposing teams don't enjoy playing there. Anywhere where there's a Chick-fil-A promotion within that arena, you're
Yeah.
gonna shoot a lower free throw percentage because the crowd is so crazy. I developed a based on this promotion, I loved this, and I got down to the core of what it was. What is it about the Chick-fil-A promotion that makes it so enticing for fans? And I centered on these, like, I wrote down these 4 principles that we try to do whenever we do brand partnerships within sports. One of them is, so I'll just name them off, but it's centered on the product. You gotta get the fans to engage with your
Yep.
brand.
Yep.
It meets them where they are, so you're not asking consumers to go out of their way to engage with your brand,
Yep.
and it adds value to everyone who's engaging. And when you think about that, it's so important that everyone is getting value and everyone is engaging, because when let's say that you don't really care about Chick-fil-A, or like a sandwich is not really that enticing to you. When everyone else around you is standing up and cheering and screaming, that energy is contagious.
Yep.
And so even if you don't care necessarily about what it is, you're going to stand up and you're going to be want to be part of that attention and action and excitement and engagement.
Yeah.
So anyways, those are the 4 kind of brand principles that we use whenever we try to think about a new engagement program within an arena or a sports property.
So thank you for unpacking that for me. I love both your answers for different reasons. For Fortnite, so man, talk about, I don't, with the exception of maybe Lego, I'm not sure there's another company that has made brand partnerships such a central part of their product strategy, right?
Yeah.
And the way they're approaching it, if you think about Lego's transformation, right? There came a point in time where Lego's revenues were pretty low, but they've been able, anything and everything is a Lego set nowadays, right?
Mhm.
And it's because they've been able to constantly keep Lego relevant by partnering with all these different brands and IPs, continually produce new sets, like anything from Back to the Future to Indiana Jones to Manchester United, like Harry Potter, everything's
Yeah.
been. And
That's a
so
really good point.
I really think that Fortnite, when I look at Fortnite and what they're doing, I really think it's like they're running the Lego circa 2000s playbook, and they're keeping their product so incredibly relevant. And like you can load in and kids can find, or adults too, video games or not, plenty of adults play video games as well. But whatever your favorite character, your favorite hero, whatever it is, you can find it in there.
Yeah.
And they
That's
did
a great
one
point.
recently. They did one recently, Lego Fortnite, actually, and I'm talking about Lego. But I have such an admiration for what Epic's doing. And I don't want to digress too much, but they built an entire new game mode inside of Fortnite just for Lego. And they could have just slapped Lego characters on there and did the same old thing, but they really created this new game mode where you can build stuff like Lego and everything, and really gave it much. And the level of integration that they have in their partnerships, right? Think about so many brand partnerships. Like look at your average co-branded sneaker, right?
Yeah.
Where it's maybe you get a logo on there, maybe Eminem actually just came out with a new album and I was reading some press about it, and I learned that during one of his recent performances, he wore his own brand of Jordan sneakers. There was like an Eminem slash Michael Jordan Air Jordans that came out, right? And
Yeah.
you go and look at that, and there's only so much you can do with a shoe, right? You put your colors, you put your logo, whatever, maybe it looks a little bit different, right? But if you think about, and to Nike's credit, they do a great job of that, right? They'll involve those artist partners. It's actually a great collaboration, and the product has tons of input from the partnering brand. But if you think about the level of integration required with something like that versus something like Fortnite, where they're literally building the product around your IP in a super integrated way, I just admire them so much that, and they do it rapidly and consistently, right?
Yeah.
Whoever is sourcing, whoever is on the partnership team, they're lining them up. When the Marvel movies come out, they've got it locked, loaded, ready to go, and to your point, you hit the nail on the head. It's always relevant, and then they sunset it when its day in the sun kinda sets. So I love that one, I appreciate you bringing it up. Go ahead.
It's interesting, really quickly, I was just gonna say, if you take a step back on the Lego partnership, the Fortnite Lego partnership, you take it a step back of what Fortnite was trying to accomplish. I think obviously there's some adjacencies, and they probably saw the user base from Minecraft
Yeah,
and it thought, how do we tap into this user base? And Fortnite kind of has their building capabilities
yeah,
already, but Minecraft was different. And
yeah,
it was, they saw the opportunity there and they said, okay, we can either try and be a little bit of a me too into that market space or try to do it better than Minecraft, which probably would have been a really hard endeavor and
yeah,
to switch the user base. Or they partner with an evergreen, like high visibility equity company like Lego who has the same consumer base.
yeah,
And then they do it that way to tap into, we know you love to build and you also love Legos. Why don't we just bring those two things together? We'll create a new product for you that's going to be different than what you have on the Minecraft platform, not a Me Too. And I'm not saying there's everything is adjacent, but I think that the strategy was probably born from that to say that we can get there faster and be
oh,
more
yeah.
credible by partnering with Lego as opposed to just trying to build something that can be a direct competitor ourselves.
Yeah, I totally agree. If you think about it, what is Minecraft if not virtual Legos, right?
Yeah.
And they're just taking that idea. I totally agree. I totally agree. And I don't want to get too much into the product design of Fortnite, but absolutely. You see them not only do that with IPs, but if there's a competing battle royale video game product that comes out, they will just graft like the best ideas from that title into their game. They've done
Yeah.
it a lot of times over and over. They did it with Apex Legends. They've done it with
Yeah.
a couple other titles. And so I think whatever product teams they have running there, their design and engineering teams, man, they are just so brand partnership aside, I totally agree. And I think you're right. I think that you hit the nail on the head where it's all about the audience that they could be competitive for, right?
Mhm.
And I think Fortnite is really compelling because if they can fast follow and graft the best parts of their product into Fortnite, then suddenly now you've got Lego Fortnite, which is comparable to Minecraft, but you also have all these other cool characters that Minecraft doesn't have. And it's got that fidelity, that sheen, that polish, and that becomes a really powerful. Imagine in like the food and beverage world, if you could say our product is just like theirs, except better in this
Right.
one dimension. And
Yeah.
anyway, the other one, I wanted to talk briefly about Chick-fil-A and their partner. Now, is it with the NBA that they partner
Mhm.
with?
Yeah. It's with each of the NBA teams. So they
Got it.
have a team partnership. So it's not every NBA team, but yeah.
Got it. No, I love that one And it reminds me of a brand partnership that Verizon did with the NBA back in 2016. Did you ever hear about like the data dunks?
No.
Um,
Uh-uh.
Back in, I'll tie it all together, I promise. I know I'm meandering a little bit, but back in 2016, Verizon had a data dunks promotion where basically during March Madness, right, during the top 16 or 32 or whatever it is, right, they took all the teams that made it to March Madness and they said, okay, Verizon customers can make their own dunk squad out of any one of these teams. And anytime any one of those players dunks,
Hmm.
then the people who have them on their team, the Verizon customers who have them on their team, they get free data. So now,
Oh,
8 years later, data's become like much more cheaper. It's not
sure.
nearly as exciting. Back then, it was like, oh, holy crap, so and so
That's
dunked the
smart.
ball.
Yeah.
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 But
That's a great point.
the reason I thought of it when you're talking about Chick-fil-A is because you're talking about how engaged the audience gets when
Hmm.
someone misses a free throw. But if you think both partnerships, they do this other thing where it's like suddenly fans who might be otherwise be a little less engaged have a reason to perk up and really pay attention, right?
Yep.
Suddenly Chick-fil-A, or in this case, Verizon, suddenly they can legitimately sponsor like some of that secondary and tertiary content. Oh man, we're talking about free throw percentage, right?
Yeah.
And the ESPN post game analysis segment with Stephen A. Smith or whoever, right? We're talking
Mhm.
about, and suddenly Chick-fil-A is a really legitimate reason to be a part of that conversation.
Yeah.
Oh, everyone got a chicken sandwich, you know what I mean? And there was something similar with Verizon, what we're talking about dunking. And suddenly there is a statistic that we can anchor in and suddenly have a talking point in all this extra game content, but it
Mhm.
just makes it become really relevant. And that's all aside from like that. Can you think about something more emotionally visceral than watching like, dude, it's so hype when you're there in the stadium and
Yeah.
everyone's bated breath. Is this guy going to sink his shots or not? Right.
Yeah.
The same thing with the dunks, right? Someone
Yeah.
slam dunks, super cool thing. The only thing that could make it cooler is if you got like some free promo on top of it, right?
That's really interesting too, because I think the other thing that we talk about a lot as we do these types of promotions or when we think about promotions is personal investment.
Yeah.
And how do you get people personally invested in whatever you're doing?
Yeah.
When you think back to, we just talked about Fortnite and Lego and in Fortnite, that's exactly what they're doing. They're trying to have you personally invested in this because you care about it on some level.
Yeah.
With that promotion too, because you pick the players that are dunking. So it's almost like whether you care about those, whether you cared, I should say, about those players or not, after you pick them for your team, man, now you're personally invested in that
Yeah.
person's personal success.
Yep.
And that's the same thing with, we talk about it in sports betting as well, because sports betting and fantasy is another one, right? Where, and filling out your bracket for March Madness. Why does everybody do that? And why
Yep.
does everybody get so excited, even if they've never watched a basketball game in their
Yep.
life?
Yep.
It's because they're personally invested and it's personal to them because the people that they're picking or the team that they're picking or the teams that on their bracket are theirs. And it's like when you can get that level of personal investment, especially in a partnership, oh my goodness, you've struck gold.
Yeah.
Because at that point, like people are, it's, it's something that they're willing to share, to talk about.
Yep.
They get excited. It creates a visceral reaction when something good goes their way. Oh, that's the holy grail.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to do because at what scale can you possibly give someone
Yeah.
some they are that personally invested in? A lot of times that comes at it's either money, right? That they are giving up or they have to give up their time. And how do you could do something that's compelling enough that they'd either give up their money or their time?
Yep. Yep. No, I love that. I think you're totally right. And obviously, that looks different for every company, right? Like we could digress and get into the weeds on how Chick-fil-A structures something like that versus how Verizon structures something like that. But I think you're keying into the key concept there. I appreciate you sharing those partnerships. There's a lot of meat on those bones. I want to follow up with, I think a lot of our listeners think about a lot is, what point should a brand legitimately seek out a brand partnership, right? If you think about, just earlier in our conversation, just 2 or 3 topics ago, you were talking about, hey, there's all this red tape, there's all this effort, lots of I's to dot, T's to cross, a lot of coordination, a lot of back and forth, right? It's like the work is greater than the sum of its parts when you're doing brand partnerships. If I'm at a smaller brand, at what point does it become worth all that red tape and all the extra effort versus just taking those resources and doing traditional brand building motions and activities?
A really great question. And what I would say is that when we think about brand partnerships, it's about building a new capability or product or more effectively targeting a cohort. It's essentially anything that naturally we don't have the core competency to do on our own
Sure.
or to be as effective as we could without said partnership. And I think we've talked about it and talked around it a little bit as we've talked about Fortnite and Chick-fil-A. Like Chick-fil-A could give away sandwiches anywhere,
Yeah.
essentially, right? But you have a captive audience and a cohort that they're probably trying to reach, and an association. That's the other thing. Association with something that is so beloved by their fans. Like,
Yeah.
you think about probably the NFL is maybe the best one to talk about, but the and I think we talked about this a little bit with when we were talking about, like, fan affinity, right?
Yep. Yep.
There's nothing as great as, like, that fan affinity that you get with your team, and partnering with a brand or a sports team that allows you to unlock that affinity and
Yeah.
association is something really strong.
So you keyed into something there that I think is just bang on, like this idea of core competencies, right? You're right. Chick-fil-A could give away sandwiches everywhere, but what are they getting when they partner with the NBA? The NBA could just give out its own chicken sandwiches, right? It could go
Yeah.
down to Costco. I'm sure they got kitchen space. They could pay catering staff, prepare 5,000, however many sandwiches, right? They could do all that, and the end result would be, oh, we're getting some random sandwich, right? At the
Yeah.
same time, Chick-fil-A has enough money that they could probably like invest in their own Bush League basketball associate. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be the NBA. They could sponsor some
Right.
teams, but it would not have the brand impact or the
Yeah.
cultural impact. So it's like, the turn of phrase I like is like 1 + 1 = 3,
Mm.
where it's like, Chick-fil-A, we have these deep pockets and generous operating budgets, but rather than retread all this expertise and work that the NBA has just been killing for the past century, why? Just
Yeah.
partner with it. Don't build your own, right? So one of my favorite brand partnerships ever was Halo and 7-Eleven. They made
Mm.
like the video game Halo. They made these Halo themed 7-Eleven cups. And it's okay, Microsoft could probably make Slurpee cups if they wanted to, right?
Yeah.
7-Eleven could start a game studio if they wanted to, right?
Sure.
Makes 0 sense when you could simply partner with someone, right?
Yeah.
But I think you hit the nail on the head, that core competency idea.
And there's value exchange in it, right? Where it doesn't necessarily, I mean, I'm sure Chick-fil-A pays for the promotion that they do with the team because the team, the affinity with fans is like that audience is so important, but there's a value exchange that you can argue for both sides. And that doesn't have to be monetary all
Yeah.
the time. It's, hey, when we've talked about this a little bit before, but this is what we did with our Doritos packaging. So
Yeah.
we want to partner with Call of Duty. Guess what? We're going to slap Call of Duty on 100 million bags
Yeah.
across the US. You think that's going to be just as valuable or probably more valuable
Yeah.
than even like a TV commercial or a radio ad or anything else? Like any store that you walk in across the US, you're going to see Call of Duty on it.
Yeah.
every store in America. So, like, how and then it's what can you provide to us? You give us that IP, maybe we give some exclusives to our fans, we create that personalization at scale.
Okay, so I think those are useful heuristics for brands that are thinking about partnering. And so there's another angle that I want to scratch on a little bit here. A lot of our listener audience, they are either immature brands or brands that have not totally solved the awareness problem. If you're doing brand partnership work at a small brand, there's a good chance that you are relatively novice at brand partnership work just broadly. It's not until companies reach a certain level of brand gravitas, if you will,
Mhm.
that they really start maturing. And Frito Lay, for example, has some of the best brand partnership talent in the world because they're such a well established house of brands, right?
Yeah.
So, with that context, I wanted to ask you is what advice would you give to a newer or novice brand partnership professional, either someone who's just starting out at a household name brand, or maybe someone who is in a position where they have to do brand partnership work at an immature brand? What advice would you give to these folks as they're just starting out? Is there anything that you wish that you explicitly wish that you would have known as you first started your career in brand partnership work?
Yeah. I will tell you that I or maybe I should start from one of the most common mistakes that I see as brands try to partner with us. And I take a lot of emails and sometimes calls where they're telling there's a brand or a partner who wants to come in and partner with Frito Lay in some capacity. And what that is, the biggest mistake is that they start talking about what they want to get out of the partnership, which is never what I want to hear. Because just at the surface level, if you can step in the shoes of whoever you're trying to partner with, don't talk about your own brand. Don't talk about what you're trying to get out of this partnership until the very end when you say, here's what this will do for us. But what I want to hear is tell me, instead of thinking about what you want out of the partnership, think about what the other partner needs to get out of the exchange. Help them see the value of partnering with you, not what their brand brings to you. You have to really sell your brand, right?
Yeah.
You have to do it in a way that's saying, here's what I'm going to bring to the table based on what your needs are. There's two parts of that. The first thing that you have to do is you have to listen to what the other partner is potentially looking for or what's important to them. And obviously there needs to be some exchange before you can get to a point where that other partner would be willing to listen to you or hear what you could potentially bring to the table. I get sold all the time on like LED screens or, hey, we've got this new venue that's going to pop up and Frito Lay can be a part of that. And I'm like, why would I care? What made you think that I would even care about this partnership at all? Because they haven't listened to even what I'm trying to accomplish. And a lot of times, a lot of those initiatives are awareness driving, right? Like LED or big screen, or it's going to be X many impressions. And I'm like, do you know a person that doesn't know Doritos? And I don't mean that in an arrogant way. I'm
Yeah.
like literally, if you know someone that has never heard of Doritos before, that's like over 15 years old,
Yeah.
I would be shocked. So we don't have an awareness issue. I think really understanding and coming at it from the standpoint of saying, what does what I'm bringing, what is that going to do for your brand before telling them what it's going to do for me is like one of the most common mistakes that I'll see all the time. And obviously, when people are trying to sell something, they're going to talk about how great their brand is and yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, that stuff is in one ear and out the other until I know how it's going to impact me.
Yeah.
And I would say, like, from a value exchange, let's say CPG to CPG, we've had several partners. I won't name any names here. Candy or confectionery company came to us and they started talking about all these things that they would love to leverage from Frito Lay. And I'm like, what are you providing to us? I need to know that first before we're talking about anything.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just you get so excited about the potential of partnering with another brand that you start to think about all the different ways that it could impact your own brand, and
Yeah.
you stop and you don't stop to take a think first about, let me step in their shoes and see if this would even make sense for them.
Yeah.
What could we potentially or possibly offer them that they would want to do a partnership with us?
Yeah. I think your answer is really insightful, right? I had a friend who was a brand manager at Microsoft for a number of years, and he always said that one of the best heuristics to determine whether or not you should engage in brand partnership work is if other brands can approach you having done some of that mental homework about what it might look like. You said how it might
Yeah.
benefit you. If your brand is at the point that someone else can think in terms of their brand and your brand and come and say your brand would benefit for these reasons and have done the work, that's a decent working heuristic, right? So there's that part of it. And then the other thing that I think's tied up in your answer is that in order for a brand to do that, in order for a brand, for example, in order for a confectionery brand to come to FRITO LAY and say, hey, we want to partner with you. Oh, here's the things we can offer you. In order for them to do that in an effective way, they've had to do the deep homework on their brand as well
Yeah.
and your brand, right?
Yes.
But
Yeah.
if you don't know what you can offer, if you don't know what your brand represents
Yes.
well
That's a
enough
good point. Yeah.
to show that to someone else, right?
Yeah.
Then if you can't clarify your brand's equity, right? Then it's like,
Mhm.
what do? You got some homework to do, right?
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for that. One last question for you. We're getting short on time. Thank you again for joining us. This is just a curiosity, right? Frito
Yeah.
Lay is such a well-known, it's a household name. It's a mega brand, right? I'm curious, and you also mentioned you answer a lot of cold solicitations, cold outreach. I'm very curious. If you had to guesstimate, what is the ratio between just ideas? Like you and your team are throwing spaghetti at the wall or you're considering
Mm.
potential brand partnerships. What's the ratio between that top of funnel versus what us as consumers actually see? What actually gets
Yeah.
out the door, gets
Mm.
past the red tape, actually gets made? What would you say the ratio is between those two numbers?
Oh, man. It's gotta be more than 100 to 1.
Yeah.
Uh, there are I've been talking about I've had ideas that I've tried to pitch for 7 years now that just, for whatever reason, they can't come to fruition. I would say there's a number of reasons why brand partnerships don't take off. Timing, um, obviously, like we talked about, value exchange is not there between
Mhm.
it's not equitable value exchange, and either one side is not willing to come up or come down or whatever that is. Legal, PR concerns, execution issues is another huge one. Like, how do you might have core competencies of how you want to execute, but what I could talk to one of them. This may seem super simple, but we tried to create a joint display with Call of Duty when I was on Doritos, where it's let's put the game right next to a bag of Doritos,
Yeah.
right? And just say, pick up the Doritos as you're picking up the hard copy game, and you're gonna get double XP for a couple hours or whatever it is. Executionally, to try to get those teams in a place and the retailers to
Yeah.
build a display that would be able to hold both Doritos, which seems so incredibly easy when you just think about it, like
Yeah.
at a single store level. Now try doing that across, I don't know, 20,000, 30,000 different stores across
Yeah.
America. Can
Yeah.
you build a unit that is efficient enough? And the shipping methodologies and the logistics behind video games as opposed to chips, and how
Yeah.
do they merchandise together?
Yep.
Are you gonna see tons of displays where the game is there and the bags are not there, or the bags are there and the game is
Yep.
so it's just when you start to get into larger scale partnerships, the complexity becomes so great that it takes an inordinate amount of time to try and develop something, and
Yeah.
it kills partnerships all the time.
Yeah.
That's why, like I said, I respect a brand like Fortnite, who's just able to be so efficient. And again, you're not talking about like a physical, tangible product,
Yeah.
which really complicates things a lot of times. But still, to be able to execute as swiftly and efficiently as they have is impressive.
Yeah. No, I love that. There's like all these factors, like you're hoping, going back to what you said earlier, you're hoping to create that moment of hyper investment, right?
Yeah.
And it's like when so much of creating that moment is beyond your direct control, it starts to get iffier and iffier, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking back to my time in video games a little bit. And one of the reasons that consoles, there's a group of people who are like, why don't we all just, if you look at the hardware between gaming consoles and like the equivalent components in the PC desktop,
Hmm.
it's like just build a PC, right? Like it's cheaper
Yeah.
or whatever. But the reason that game developers prefer to develop on consoles is because they know every end consumer is playing on the same piece of hardware, right?
Mm.
So that experience is consistent.
Yeah.
And I know that's a bit of a stretch, right? But it's this idea between being able to make really good assumptions about what you could design the best chip bag slash hard copy Call of Duty display fits in any square foot. Like you could design away all the problems, but at the end of the day, something like you said is probably going to happen, right? We're like, crap, we're all out of one or the other. And the
Yeah.
entire experience goes down the drain just for something that's out of your control.
Yeah, and the store managers are upset because that's display space that they could have been using for something else. It's only being half used or
Yeah,
whatever it is. Can I give you one other like
of
super quick
course.
example?
Absolutely.
We have a partnership with an MLB team, and this idea that we had was around Lay's. And back in the day, I don't know how early this was, but we were trying to make fetch happen basically. Back in the day, people used to call home runs taters. They'd call them taters. And we're
Yeah.
like, maybe we could do something with this.
Yeah.
So we had this idea where whenever a home run was hit within the stadium, we were going to call like, oh, X team just hit a tater.
Yeah.
Everyone in the stadium gets a free bag of Lays,
Yeah.
and then we were gonna parachute Lays from the top of the building, like, into the stadium.
Yeah.
We were gonna have people hold signs that had a potato with a target on it, and if it hit it, you were gonna get free Lays for a year.
Yeah.
And we had this, like, grandiose idea that was all gonna be around these home runs or these taters that we were gonna call 'em. We started to partner with this MLB team, and it just kept getting watered down. They weren't able to execute the parachuted lays from the building. Like they were going to have a location where they were just going to throw them. The person who caught the home run, like that row was the only row that they could execute to give a free bag of lays.
Yeah.
They couldn't put up the signs because they couldn't guarantee the execution was there. There was another partner that actually owned the LEDs during a home run hit. So then it was like we would have to do it in between innings, and the announcer would have to say, "Oh, the
Yeah.
so and so team like hit a tater," but it was like the moment had passed.
Yeah.
And what I would say to that is this: is we ended up moving forward with it, like super watered down, and I don't regret it, but because it was a good learning experience. But what I learned from it is this: don't be afraid to back out of a partnership that doesn't have the impact that you need
Yeah.
to achieve your objectives.
Yeah.
Because I think we've done a pre and a post test with this. I don't know that we're gonna move the needle on people like recognizing that Lay's like owned home runs. But if we were able to get to the level of impact that we started with, maybe it would have.
Yeah.
And there comes a point where you might feel like you're overly invested in this partnership and you have to move forward with it.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't have the impact that you're looking for, you have to be okay to pull the plug.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
No, I love it. I love that. I love that. I think you've saved a lot of brand partnership managers a lot of heartache, right? Because it's like that sunk cost fallacy, right?
yeah,
We put
right.
some what we just want to execute. There's a lot of pressures on any given team member on either side of the partnership to make something happen. List goes on, right? But anyway, I wish we could dive in more. Kyle, we'll have to have you back on at some point just to dive deeper. It's been riveting. I really appreciate you coming on the Brand Together podcast. Quickly for our listener audience, if they want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm happy to I'll take any emails. Like I said, I'm happy to connect with anyone, talk about this, or if you have a brand partnership, let's talk. So they can find me at kyle.aronson at pepsico.com.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us today. Can't wait to have you back at some point in the future.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Thank you.